The champagne flute shattered against the polished hardwood floor, silencing the hum of the wedding reception. I stood frozen, my black tuxedo crisp but unassuming, as my son-in-law's voice, slurred with arrogance and too much wine, cut through the air like a blade. "He's just a waiter," Ethan sneered, pointing at me, his new father-in-law, as he leaned toward his groomsmen, oblivious to the crowd's growing unease. I'm not a man who seeks the spotlight. At 60, I've lived a life of quiet service, moving through the world with a tray in hand, a smile on my face, and a heart full of stories I rarely tell. But tonight, at my daughter Lily's wedding, Ethan's words weren't just an insult. They were a spark igniting a fire I'd kept buried for decades. I straightened, feeling the weight of every eye in the room, and knew this was the moment to reveal the truth. My name is Robert Hayes, and for 30 years, I've worked as a waiter at the Golden Crest, a five-star restaurant in Chicago's heart. To most, I'm invisible, a man who refills wine glasses, clears plates, and nods politely. But to those who know me, really know me, I'm something else entirely. Ethan, with his pressed suit and smug grin, had no idea who he'd just mocked. He didn't know about the lives I'd touched, the secrets I'd kept, or the empire I'd built in the shadows of my apron. Lily, my only child, glowed in her white gown across the room, her eyes catching mine with a flicker of worry. She'd begged me to keep things civil tonight, knowing Ethan's tendency to flaunt his wealth and belittle others. At 28, Lily was my world, fierce, kind, and brilliant, with her mother's smile and my stubborn heart. Her mother, Grace, had been gone 10 years, taken by cancer, leaving me to raise Lily alone. I'd poured everything into her, working double shifts to fund her dreams, from art classes to her degree in environmental science. Now, here she was, married to a man who thought he could define me with a single word. Ethan's laugh echoed as he continued, unaware of the shift in the room. "I mean, look at him," he said, gesturing to me as I stood near the dessert table, holding a tray of petit fours. Lily's dad, the waiter, probably thrilled to be in a place like this for once. The groomsmen chuckled, but the guests, friends, family, and colleagues stiffened. I saw Lily's face tighten, her hands clutching her bouquet. My heart ached for her, but it also burned for me. I could have let it go. I'd endured worse, snide comments from entitled patrons, assumptions about my worth based on my job. But this was different. This was my daughter's wedding, and Ethan had crossed a line. I set the tray down, the clink of glass drawing eyes. The band stopped playing, sensing the tension. I walked to the center of the room, where a small podium stood for speeches, and tapped the microphone. The feedback squealed, and every head turned. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady but laced with an edge I hadn't used in years. "I'm Robert, Lily's father. Apparently, to some, I'm just a waiter." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan's smirk faltered, but he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as if daring me to continue. "Let me tell you a story about what just a waiter really means. 30 years ago, I was a young man with big dreams and empty pockets. I'd wanted to be a chef, to create dishes that told stories, but life had other plans. Grace and I married young, and when Lily came along, I took the first job I could find, waiting tables at the Golden Crest. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. I learned every guest's name, their quirks, their allergies. I watched CEOs close million-dollar deals over steak and listened to heartbroken lovers whisper over wine. I became the keeper of their moments, their confidant in a bow tie. But I didn't stop there. I saved every tip, every extra dollar, and invested it, first in small stocks, then in real estate. I studied markets at night, read books on finance while Lily slept. Over decades, I built a portfolio that grew quietly, like a seed in fertile soil. By the time Lily was in college, I owned 3 properties, including the building that housed the Golden Crest. Yes, I owned the restaurant where I worked, but I never told a soul. I loved the job, the people, the rhythm of service. I didn't need to flaunt my wealth to feel its worth. The crowd was silent now, leaning forward. Ethan's face had gone pale, his wine glass forgotten in his hand. Lily's eyes shimmered with tears, but there was pride there, too. I kept going, my voice rising. Being a waiter taught me humility, resilience, and the value of every person in a room. It taught me to listen, to see people for who they are, not what they own. And tonight, Ethan, you reminded me why that matters. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. You see, I'm not just a waiter. I'm a man who's provided for his family, who's built a legacy, who's earned the respect of everyone in this room. Except, it seems, you. Gasps echoed, followed by a smattering of applause. Ethan shrank in his seat, his bravado gone. Lily stepped forward, her hand reaching for mine, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I turned to the crowd, my heart pounding. This wedding, this beautiful day, it's not about me. It's about my daughter and the life she's chosen. But let me be clear, no one, not even her husband, gets to diminish the people who love her. The applause grew louder, a wave of support that drowned out Ethan's stunned silence. I stepped back, my chest tight with emotion, and handed the microphone to the MC. As I walked back to the dessert table, Lily rushed to me, throwing her arms around my neck. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice thick. I had no idea. I hugged her tightly, feeling the years of sacrifice and love in that moment. Ethan watched us, his face a mix of shame and disbelief. The truth was out, and it had shifted the room's gravity. But this was only the beginning. The night was young, and the consequences of Ethan's words were far from over. The reception hall buzzed with whispers as I returned to my place among the guests, the weight of my speech still hanging in the air. Lily clung to my arm, her eyes searching mine for answers I wasn't ready to give. Ethan, meanwhile, sat rigid at the head table, his jaw tight, avoiding the stares of the crowd. I could feel the shift. My words had cracked the polished veneer of his carefully curated image, and he wasn't prepared for it. I hadn't planned to reveal so much tonight. For years, I'd kept my financial success quiet, letting people assume what they wanted about Robert Hayes, the waiter. It was easier that way. No questions, no expectations. But Ethan's mockery had stirred something deep, a need to protect not just my dignity, but Lily's future. She deserved better than a man who measured worth by titles and bank accounts. As the band struck up a slow song, couples drifted to the dance floor, but the tension lingered. I caught snippets of conversation, guests marveling at my story, others casting sidelong glances at Ethan. My best friend, Marcus, a chef at the Golden Crest, clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You dropped a bomb, Rob," he said, his grin wide. "About time someone put that kid in his place." Marcus had known me since the early days, back when I was scraping by, learning the art of service while dreaming of something bigger. He'd been there through Grace's illness, through Lily's milestones, and now, through this moment of reckoning. "You think I went too far?" I asked, my voice low. Marcus shook his head. "Nah, he needed to hear it. But watch your back. Guys like Ethan don't take kindly to being humbled." Lily tugged me toward a quiet corner, her face a mix of awe and worry. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "All this time, you own the restaurant? The properties?" I thought. She trailed off, her eyes glistening. I sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I didn't want you to see me differently, Lil. I wanted you to know me as your dad, not some landlord or investor. The money, it's just a tool. It's not who I am." She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning. Lily was sharp, always had been. She'd inherited Grace's intuition, her ability to read between the lines. "Does Ethan know?" she asked, glancing toward her husband, who was now surrounded by his groomsmen, their heads bent in heated discussion. "Not yet," I said, "but he will." The truth was, Ethan's world was about to unravel further. He worked as a junior partner at a law firm, one that leased office space in a building I owned. He had no idea I was his landlord, just as he had no idea I'd been quietly supporting causes he claimed to champion, charities for underprivileged kids, environmental initiatives Lily cared about. I'd never flaunted it, never needed to. But tonight, I realized silence wasn't enough. As the evening wore on, Ethan approached me, his face a mask of forced composure. "Robert," he said, his voice tight, "can we talk?" I nodded, leading him to a balcony overlooking the venue's garden. The night air was cool, the scent of roses heavy. He cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't mean to offend you. It was a joke, you know." Just wedding nerves. I studied him, his polished shoes scuffing the stone floor, his hands fidgeting with his cufflinks. Ethan was 30, handsome in a calculated way, with a career built on charm and connections. But beneath the surface, I saw insecurity, a man desperate to prove he was more than the small-town kid who'd clawed his way to the top. A joke, I repeated, my tone even. You think calling me just a waiter in front of my daughter's guests is funny? He flinched, but his eyes hardened. Look, I get it. You're successful, more than I realized. But let's not make this a thing. Lily doesn't need drama on her wedding day. His words were smooth, practiced, but they grated. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. Scared of what I knew, what I could do. Ethan, I said, stepping closer. This isn't about drama. It's about respect. You disrespected me, sure, but worse, you disrespected Lily by thinking you could define her father, her family, with a cheap shot. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. I continued, my voice low but firm. You're her husband now. That means you're part of my family. But if you ever treat her the way you treated me tonight, you'll answer to more than words. He stared at me, his confidence wavering. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, but instead, he turned and walked back inside, leaving me alone under the stars. I gripped the balcony railing, my heart heavy. I'd spent years shielding Lily from the world's harsh edges, but I couldn't shield her from her own choices. Not anymore. Back inside, the reception continued, but the mood had shifted. Guests approached me, offering handshakes, stories of their own humble beginnings. A woman in a glittering dress, a regular at the Golden Crest, pulled me aside. Robert, you've been serving me for years, and I never knew, she said, her eyes warm. You're a class act. I smiled, deflecting, but her words stayed with me. They reminded me why I'd stayed a waiter all these years, because every interaction, every moment, mattered. As the night wound down, Lily found me again, her face softer now. Dad, I'm proud of you, she said, her voice steady. But I'm scared too. Ethan, he's not perfect, but I love him. What happens now? I pulled her close, feeling the weight of her question. We move forward, I said. But we do it with eyes open. The wedding ended with fireworks, bursts of light painting the sky. But for me, the real explosion had already happened. Ethan's words had forced me to step out of the shadows, and now, there was no going back. Tomorrow, I'd sit down with Lily and tell her everything. About the properties, the investments, the life I'd built. And maybe, just maybe, Ethan would learn what it meant to be part of a family that valued heart over ego. The morning after the wedding, the world felt different. The glow of the reception had faded, replaced by a quiet tension that hung over Lily's new life like a storm cloud. I sat at my kitchen table, a modest apartment in Chicago's Lincoln Park, sipping coffee and staring at a photo of Grace and me from our own wedding day. Her laugh, frozen in time, reminded me of the promises we'd made. To love, to protect, to be honest. I wondered if I'd failed her by keeping so much from Lily. Lily called around noon, her voice hesitant. Dad, can we talk? Just you and me. I agreed, suggesting we meet at the Golden Crest, where I'd worked for decades. It felt fitting, a place where I was both invisible and indispensable, where I could show her the truth of my life. When she arrived, her face was pale, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She wore jeans and a sweater, her wedding glow replaced by something heavier. We sat in a corner booth, the restaurant quiet before the lunch rush. Ethan's upset, she started, twisting her wedding ring. He says you embarrassed him in front of everyone. He's talking about leaving for a few days to clear his head. My stomach tightened. I'd expected pushback, but not this. Leaving? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. On your honeymoon. She nodded, tears welling. He says he needs space to process. Dad, I don't know what to do. I love him, but last night I saw a side of him I didn't expect. I reached across the table, taking her hand. Lily, you saw the truth. That's a start. Now let me tell you mine. Over the next hour, I laid it all bare, the years of saving, the investments, the properties. I told her about the building that housed Ethan's law firm, about the scholarships I'd funded anonymously for kids like her, about the nights I'd spent studying finance while she slept. Her eyes widened with each revelation, her mouth parting in disbelief. Dad, why didn't you tell me? She asked again, her voice softer now, almost reverent. I wanted you to be proud of me for who I am, not what I have, I said. I wanted you to see that hard work, kindness, service, they matter more than money. But last night, Ethan made it clear he doesn't see that. And that's a problem. Lily looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee mug. I thought he was different, she whispered. He talks about justice, about helping people. But last night, he was cruel. I nodded, letting her words settle. People show you who they are when they're tested, Lil. Ethan's test came early. What he does next will tell you everything. She looked up, her eyes searching mine. What do I do, Dad? I don't want to lose him, but I can't unsee this. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. You don't have to decide today. Marriage is a journey, not a moment. Give him a chance to show you he's worth it. But don't ever let him, or anyone, make you feel small. She squeezed my hand, a faint smile breaking through. You're not just a waiter, Dad. You're incredible. The rest of the day passed in a blur of errands and phone calls, but my mind stayed on Lily. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from heartbreak, but I knew she had to face this herself. That evening, Marcus invited me to his place for a drink, his tiny apartment filled with the warmth of his wife, Carla, and their 2 kids. So what's the plan with Mr. Big Shot? Marcus asked, pouring me a whiskey. No plan, I said, swirling the glass. I said my piece. Now it's up to Ethan to figure out who he wants to be. Carla, who joined us, frowned. Rob, that boy's got an ego the size of Lake Michigan. You shook him up, but guys like that don't change easy. I nodded, her words echoing my own fears. Maybe, I said, but Lily's strong. She'll figure it out. The next day, I got a call from Ethan's boss, Paul, a partner at the law firm. I'd known Paul for years, serving him countless lunches at the Golden Crest. Robert, he said, his voice warm but cautious. I heard about the wedding. Quite a speech. I chuckled, bracing myself. Word travels fast. Paul hesitated. Ethan's been off today. Distracted. I don't know what's going on, but I thought you should know. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. Ethan's behavior wasn't just personal, it was professional, too. If he was unraveling, it could affect Lily's future, their shared dreams. I decided to pay a visit to the law firm, not as a waiter, but as the landlord. It was time to remind Ethan that the world he moved in wasn't as small as he thought. The firm's office was sleek, all glass and steel, in one of my buildings downtown. I walked in, my casual jacket a stark contrast to the suits buzzing around me. The receptionist, a young woman named Tara, recognized me from the restaurant. Mr. Hayes, she said, surprised. What brings you here? I smiled. Just checking on my property. Her eyes widened, but she nodded, buzzing me through. I found Ethan in his office, staring at his computer, his tie loosened. He looked up, startled, as I knocked on the open door. Robert, he said, his voice flat. What do you want? I stepped inside, closing the door. To talk, I said. Not about the wedding, but about you. And Lily. And what happens next? He leaned back, his eyes narrowing. You think you can intimidate me because you own this building? I'm not some nobody you can push around. I sat across from him, unfazed. I'm not here to push, Ethan. I'm here to ask, do you love my daughter enough to be better than you were last night? His silence was answer enough, for now. Ethan's office felt like a cage, the air thick with his defensiveness. He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly on the desk, as if holding himself together. You don't get it, Robert, he said, his voice low but sharp. I've worked my whole life to get here, to this firm, this life. And you, what? Think you can waltz in and lecture me because you've got some secret fortune? His words stung, but I kept my face calm, letting him spill his anger. Ethan, I said, my voice steady. This isn't about money. It's about character. You humiliated me in front of my daughter's guests, but worse, you showed her who you are when you're not on your best behavior. He flinched, his eyes darting to the window. For a moment, I saw the boy beneath the bravado, scared, scrambling to keep control. But I wasn't here to coddle him. I love Lily, he said finally, his voice quieter. I do, but I don't need you judging me. You don't know what it's like to come from nothing, to fight for every scrap. I leaned back, studying him. Don't I? I asked. I started with nothing, Ethan. Less than nothing. Every dollar I have, I earned. carrying trays, smiling through insults, staying up nights to learn. The difference is, I never used my past as an excuse to hurt others. He looked away, his jaw tight. I could see the gears turning, the struggle between pride and shame. "What do you want from me?" he asked, almost a whisper. I stood, my shadow falling across his desk. "I want you to be the man Lily deserves. That starts with an apology, to her, to me, to yourself. And it starts now." I left him there, his silence louder than any argument. As I walked out of the building, the weight of the confrontation settled in my chest. I'd pushed Ethan, maybe too hard, but I couldn't let him coast on charm and excuses. Lily deserved better, and deep down, I believed Ethan could be better if he chose to be. That evening, I met Lily at her apartment, a cozy place she and Ethan had moved into just weeks before the wedding. She was unpacking boxes, her movements slow, distracted. "He called me," she said, setting down a framed photo of us from her graduation. "He's sorry, Dad. He says he wants to make it right." Her voice was hopeful, but her eyes were guarded. I sat on the couch, patting the spot beside me. "What do you think, Lil? Does he mean it?" She sighed, sinking next to me. "I don't know. He sounded different. Like he was actually listening for once. But I'm scared, Dad. What if this is who he is?" Her vulnerability broke my heart. I wanted to promise her everything would be fine, but I couldn't lie. "Give him a chance," I said, echoing my earlier words. "But watch him, Lil. Actions, not words, show you who someone is." She nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. For a moment, we were just father and daughter, no drama, no secrets. But the moment passed, and reality crept back in. The next day, Ethan surprised me. He showed up at the Golden Crest during my shift, his suit traded for a sweater, his demeanor softer. "Robert," he said, standing awkwardly by the bar, "can we talk?" I nodded, wiping my hands on my apron and leading him to a quiet table. The restaurant was busy, but my coworkers covered for me, sensing something big. "I was wrong," Ethan started, his eyes meeting mine for the first time without defiance. "What I said at the wedding, it was cruel, and I'm sorry. Not just for you, but for Lily. She deserves better than that." His words were raw, unpolished, and I believed him, not because he was perfect, but because he was trying. I nodded, letting the apology settle. "Thank you, Ethan. But this isn't about me forgiving you. It's about you showing Lily you're worth her trust." He swallowed, nodding. "I know. I'm going to try. I want to learn from you, if you'll let me." His request caught me off guard. Learn from me? A waiter? But then I remembered. He wasn't just seeing the apron now. He was seeing the man. Over the next few weeks, Ethan made good on his promise. He started small, helping Lily with chores, listening when she talked about her work with environmental nonprofits. He even stopped by the Golden Crest one evening, not as a guest, but to help me clear tables after a busy shift. My coworkers raised eyebrows, but I saw something new in Ethan, a willingness to humble himself, to learn. Lily noticed, too. She called me one night, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. "Dad, he's trying. Really trying. He's not perfect, but he's different." I smiled, relief washing over me. That's all I ever wanted, Lil. For him to try. But life isn't a straight line. Just as things seemed to stabilize, a new challenge emerged. Paul, Ethan's boss, called me again, his tone grim. "Robert, we've got a problem. Ethan's been working on a big case, but he's made some mistakes. Big ones. If he doesn't fix this, it could cost him his job." My heart sank. Ethan's redemption was fragile, and this could break it. I knew I had to act, not just for him, but for Lily. I arranged to meet Paul at the restaurant, my mind racing with possibilities. As a landlord, I had connections, resources Ethan didn't know about. Maybe I could help, not by bailing him out, but by giving him a chance to prove himself. The question was whether he'd take it, or if his pride would resurface, threatening everything he'd started to build. The Golden Crest was quiet that afternoon, the lunch rush over, the tables empty except for Paul, who sat across from me with a folder of documents. His face was lined with worry, his usual confidence dimmed. "Ethan's in over his head, Robert," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "He's handling a pro bono case for a community center facing eviction. He missed key filings, and now the landlord's pushing to foreclose. If this falls apart, it's not just his job, it's his reputation. I opened the folder, scanning the legal jargon. The community center was in one of my buildings, a property I'd bought years ago to preserve affordable spaces in Chicago's gentrifying neighborhoods. I hadn't known Ethan was working on the case. Ironic, considering I was the landlord he was fighting. I closed the folder, my mind racing. This wasn't just a chance to help Ethan. It was a chance to show him what service really meant. "Paul," I said, leaning forward, "let me talk to Ethan. I might be able to smooth things over." Paul raised an eyebrow, curious but trusting. He'd known me long enough to sense I had more pull than I let on. "Do what you can, Robert. For Lily's sake, if nothing else." That evening, I called Ethan and asked him to meet me at the community center. He arrived looking frazzled, his briefcase stuffed with papers, his eyes bloodshot from late nights. "What's this about, Robert?" he asked, glancing around the modest building, where kids played basketball in the gym and seniors chatted in the lounge. I gestured for him to follow me inside. "This place," I said, walking through the halls, "is more than a building. It's a lifeline for people who don't have much. You're fighting for them, Ethan, but you're missing the bigger picture." He frowned, defensive. "I'm doing my best. The landlord's a ghost, some holding company that won't budge." I stopped, turning to face him. "That landlord is me." His jaw dropped, the color draining from his face. "You," he stammered. "You're trying to evict them?" I shook my head. "No. I bought this building to keep it affordable, to protect places like this. But you didn't do your homework, Ethan. You didn't talk to the community, didn't dig into the ownership. You assumed you could win with charm and a few filings." He looked away, shame creeping into his expression. "I didn't know." I nodded, keeping my voice firm but kind. "You didn't ask. That's the problem. Being a lawyer, like being a waiter, isn't about looking good. It's about serving people. So here's your chance. Work with me. We'll save this center together." Ethan hesitated, then nodded, a spark of determination in his eyes. Over the next week, we met daily at the community center. I introduced him to the director, Maria, a no-nonsense woman who'd been running the place for 20 years. She showed him the programs, after-school tutoring, job training, senior care, and he listened, really listened, for the first time. I shared my plans to restructure the lease, offering terms that would keep the center open without bankrupting anyone. Watching Ethan interact with the community was like seeing a new man emerge. He took notes, asked questions, even played a pickup game with the kids, his laugh echoing through the gym. Maria pulled me aside one day, her eyes warm. "He's got potential, Robert. He just needed someone to show him how to use it." I smiled, but I knew this was only a step. Ethan's pride was still there, lurking, waiting for a chance to resurface. Lily joined us one afternoon, her face lighting up as she saw Ethan talking to a group of teens about their dreams. "Dad, he's changing," she whispered, her hand squeezing mine. "I think he's starting to get it." I nodded, but my heart was cautious. Change wasn't a moment. It was a process, and Ethan had a long way to go. By the end of the week, we drafted a new lease agreement, one that protected the community center and satisfied the legal requirements. Ethan presented it to Paul, who was impressed, not just with the work, but with Ethan's newfound humility. "You've got a good one here, Robert," Paul said over coffee. "He's learning." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only half the battle. That night, Ethan and Lily invited me to dinner at their apartment. It was a simple meal, pasta, salad, wine, but it felt like a milestone. Ethan raised his glass, his eyes meeting mine. "To Robert," he said, his voice steady, "for showing me what it means to serve." Lily beamed, and I clinked my glass against theirs, but my smile hid a quiet worry. Ethan was trying, but life had a way of testing even the best intentions. The next morning, I got a call from Maria at the community center. "Robert, we've got a problem," she said, her voice tense. "Another landlord circling, trying to buy up nearby properties. If they get a foothold, it could drive up costs for everyone." My heart sank. I knew the landlord, a ruthless developer I'd clashed with before. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about the community, and I'd need all my resources, and Ethan's help, to fight back. The developer's name was Victor Crane, a man whose reputation for bulldozing communities was as polished as his skyscrapers. I'd crossed paths with him years ago when he tried to buy out the Golden Crest's building to turn it into condos. I'd outmaneuvered him then, using my savings to purchase the property myself. But now he was back, eyeing the neighborhood around the community center. If he succeeded, rents would skyrocket, and places like Maria's Center would vanish. I called Ethan and Lily to my apartment, spreading maps and documents across the dining table. "Crane's moving fast," I said, pointing to the properties he'd targeted. "He's offering cash to small landlords, banking on their desperation. If we don't act, the community center, and others like it, won't survive." Lily's eyes narrowed, her environmentalist instincts kicking in. "This isn't just about buildings," she said. "It's about people, their homes, their lives." Ethan studied the maps, his brow furrowed. "What can we do? I'm just a lawyer, not even a senior partner. And Crane's got deep pockets." I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "You're more than just anything, Ethan. You've got skills, and I've got resources. Together, we can fight this. But it means working with the community, not just for them." Over the next few days, we built a plan. Lily rallied local activists, organizing meetings at the community center to raise awareness. Ethan dove into legal research, looking for zoning laws or protections we could leverage. I tapped my network, small business owners, other landlords, even regulars from the Golden Crest who had influence in City Hall. For the first time, I saw Ethan and Lily as a team, their strengths complementing each other. She brought passion, he brought precision. And me? I brought the quiet power of years spent listening, learning, and building. One evening, as we prepared for a community meeting, Ethan pulled me aside. "Robert, I've been thinking about the wedding," he said, his voice low. "I was an idiot. I saw you as less, because I was scared of being less myself. I'm trying to change, but I need you to know I'm all in, for Lily, for this." His honesty caught me off guard. I nodded, clapping his shoulder. "Keep showing up, Ethan. That's what matters." The community meeting was electric. Over 100 people packed the center's gym, parents, seniors, kids, all worried about their future. Maria spoke first, her voice steady but fierce, outlining Crane's plan. Lily followed, her passion igniting the crowd as she talked about the environmental and social cost of unchecked development. Then Ethan took the mic, surprising everyone with his clarity. "We're not just fighting for one building," he said. "We're fighting for a community. And we've got the law, and each other, on our side." I watched from the back, my heart swelling. Ethan wasn't just talking, he was leading. The crowd cheered, and for the first time, I saw him as Lily's partner, not just her husband. But the fight was far from over. Crane's team was relentless, filing permits and pressuring landlords. We needed a bigger play, something to stop him cold. I reached out to an old friend, Clara, a city council member who'd been a regular at the Golden Crest for years. Over coffee, I laid out our case, showing her the community's support and Ethan's legal arguments. "Crane's not invincible," she said, her eyes sharp. "If you can prove the community's value, I can push for a historic designation for the area. It'll slow him down, maybe stop him." I thanked her, knowing this was our best shot. Ethan and I worked late into the night, preparing a presentation for the city council. He was meticulous, citing precedents and gathering testimonials from residents. I provided data on the community center's impact: jobs created, kids educated, seniors supported. Lily added a report on the environmental benefits of preserving the neighborhood's green spaces. Together, we were a force, but doubt lingered. Crane had money, connections, and a knack for winning. The day of the council meeting, the room was packed. Crane sat in the front row, his suit immaculate, his smile smug. Ethan presented our case, his voice steady, his arguments sharp. Lily spoke next, her passion drawing murmurs of agreement from the crowd. I went last, not as a waiter or a landlord, but as a neighbor. "This isn't about profit," I said, my voice carrying. "It's about people. It's about home." The council deliberated for hours, the tension unbearable. When they finally voted, it was unanimous. The neighborhood would be considered for historic status, halting Crane's plans for now. The room erupted in cheers, Lily hugging Ethan, Maria wiping tears from her eyes. I stood back, watching my daughter and her husband, feeling a pride I hadn't expected. That night, we celebrated at the Golden Crest, the staff treating us like family. Ethan raised a glass, his eyes meeting mine. "To Robert," he said, "who showed me what it means to fight for something bigger." I smiled, clinking my glass, but my heart was full of Grace's memory. She'd have been proud of Lily, of Ethan, of us. But as we toasted, I knew Crane wouldn't give up. He'd regroup, come back stronger, and we'd be ready, together. The victory at the city council was a spark, but the fire wasn't out. Victor Crane wasn't the type to slink away quietly. Within days, rumors spread that he was lobbying council members, offering donations to sway their votes when the historic designation came up for final approval. I knew we couldn't rest, not if we wanted to protect the community and everything we'd fought for. Lily, Ethan, and I met at the community center, mapping out our next steps. Lily was relentless, organizing petitions and rallying neighbors to attend the next council meeting. Ethan dug into Crane's business dealings, uncovering a pattern of corner-cutting that could weaken his credibility. I reached out to my network, calling in favors from business owners and investors who valued the neighborhood's character. Together, we were a small army, but Crane's resources dwarfed ours. One evening, as we worked late at the center, Ethan surprised me again. "Robert," he said, setting down his laptop, "I've been thinking about my job. The firm's great, but it's not enough. I want to do more pro bono work, like this. It's what Lily's always cared about, and it's what I'm starting to care about, too." I looked at him, seeing the man I'd hoped he could become. "That's a start," I said. "But it's not about the work you do, it's about why you do it." Lily overheard, her smile soft but proud. "You're both impossible," she said, laughing. "But I love it." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope, not just for the community, but for their marriage. Ethan was changing, not because I'd forced him, but because he'd seen the value in something bigger than himself. The final council meeting loomed, and tension gripped us all. Crane's team arrived in force, their presentation slick and persuasive, promising jobs and modern development. But we were ready. Ethan spoke first, dismantling their arguments with precision, citing the community's economic and social contributions. Lily followed, her voice raw with emotion as she shared stories from residents. A single mom who'd found work through the center, a teen who'd earned a scholarship. I closed, speaking not as a landlord, but as a father, a neighbor, a man who'd served others his whole life. "This community isn't just buildings," I said, my voice steady. "It's people, stories, lives. You can't put a price on that." The room was silent, the council members' faces unreadable. When the vote came, it was close, too close, but the historic designation passed. The crowd cheered, and Lily threw her arms around Ethan, then me. Crane's face was stone, but he left without a word. We'd won, for now. That night, we gathered at my apartment, the three of us exhausted but elated. Ethan raised a glass of whiskey, his eyes warm. "To family," he said, looking at me, then Lily. "And to learning from our mistakes." I clinked my glass, my heart full. "To second chances," I added. Lily laughed, tears in her eyes. "To us." As we sat, talking and laughing, I thought of Grace. She'd always believed in redemption, in the power of love to change people. I'd been skeptical, but watching Ethan and Lily, I felt her presence, her faith in us all. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Crane would be back, and Ethan's growth was still a work in progress. But we were stronger now, bound by something deeper than pride or money. The next morning, I returned to the Golden Crest, slipping on my apron like armor. A regular, an older man who'd been at the wedding, stopped me. "Robert," he said, his eyes twinkling, "you're not just a waiter. You're a legend." I laughed, shaking my head. "Just doing my job," I said, but his words stayed with me. Life went on. Ethan took on more pro bono cases, finding purpose in the work. Lily launched a nonprofit to support community centers, with my quiet backing. And me? I kept serving, kept listening, kept building. The wedding, Ethan's cruel words, my speech, they were a turning point, not just for him, but for all of us. We'd seen the truth, not just about who I was, but about what we could be together. As I cleared a table that evening, a young couple smiled at me, their hands intertwined. I nodded, my heart light. I was Robert Hayes, waiter, father, landlord, fighter. And in the end, that was enough.